Jim Henson's 1986 movie Labyrinth blends classical fairy tale storytelling with wondrous world building, breathtaking visuals, and deeply imaginative characters. Seeing this film as a child undoubtedly planted seeds for my lifelong love of fantasy, storytelling, and role-playing games. Yet, even after watching it nearly 4 decades later, I've always wondered the same thing, and it involves this scene right here.
Well then, come on, which way?
Which way?
Up or down?
Well, since I'm pointed that way, I guess I'll go down.
She chose down.
Was that
Too late now. She's in the oubliette.
Wait. What if she went the other way?
Well then, come on, which way?
Well, that way, I guess.
She chose up.
On the face of it, the answer seems obvious. If she chose to go up, she would have ended up somewhere else. However, imagine if instead, this had happened.
Well then, which way?
Well, that way, I guess.
She chose up.
Was that
Too late now. She's in the oubliette.
Believe it or not, that's what some of us DMs do. It's our dirty little secret, like fudging dice or pretending to care about PC backstories.
Here we're giving false choices. Choices where no matter what decision is made, PCs end up in the same place. I've heard this referred to as railroading or quantum ogres, and it's often criticized for removing player agency. That is, the ability for players to actually make choices that affect the narrative of the story.
So maybe it's just because I'm an old grizzled dungeon master, or maybe I've read one too many RPG horror stories, but I can't help but wonder,
What was the real structure of the Labyrinth? Were there true branching paths, or one linear route?
that's what we're discussing today as we talk about player agency, the illusion of choice, and random encounters, as well as what Labyrinth teaches us about all three.
So let's take a deep dive into the movie and use it as a case study in creating complex environments for players to explore, while ensuring their choices matter.
The labyrinth. Doesn't look that hard. Well, come on, feet.
Let's start with a quick refresher on the events of Labyrinth, which, if you haven't seen it, spoilers ahead. Sarah, played by a 14-year-old Jennifer Connelly, is a spoiled teenage girl who bemoans responsibility and in a temper tantrum gets her baby brother Toby stolen by the enigmatic Goblin King Jareth, played by the iconic David Bowie. After Sarah pleads, Jareth offers to return the baby if Sarah can navigate to the center of his labyrinth within 13 hours, after which Toby would be turned into a goblin forever. Sarah's adventure through the maze leads her through a fantastical and imaginative world full of several colorful characters, some friend, some foe, and some just plain weird, as she races to rescue her baby brother and return home. So, using this as our framework, let's say Sarah is a player-controlled character, and we are the DM personified by Jareth, the Goblin King. I mean, just listen to the following exchange and tell me he doesn't sound like a typical burnt-out DM.
Everything that you wanted, I have done. I have reordered time. I have turned the world upside down, and I have done it all for you. I am exhausted from living up to your expectations.
Yeah, definitely a forever DM.
We, as DMs, will also control all the creatures she meets along the way, including her allies, Hoggle, Ludo, and Sir Didymus, who we'll consider DMPCs just to keep the focus on Sarah as our sole protagonist. So, how would we build our labyrinth? Well, let me present you with what I feel are two equally bad options, which I'll demonstrate with this deck of tarot cards. Here, each card represents a different possible choice. So, method 1, we plan out a scenario for every possible path Sarah might take during the adventure, making each one unique. There's plenty of evidence that this is how it would actually work if the labyrinth was a real geographical place. We even find out one of the untaken paths.
Hey, hang on! Never go that way.
Oh, thanks.
If she'd have kept on going down that way, she'd have gone straight to that castle.
Thanks, Worm. So yeah, let's make an encounter for every possible branching path. Throughout the movie, she comes to at least 7 decision points that I found, which, for the sake of simplicity, will reduce down to binaries.
Would you go left or right?
1. The Endless Hall. 2, the hidden passage. 3, this weird pointer sign. 4, the riddle doors. 5, up or down. 6, the hedge maze. And 7, the knockers.
It's very rude to stare.
I'm sorry, I was just wondering which door to choose.
What?
Now, if we make each choice branch out into 2 other possible choices, after 7 levels, we'll have created 128 possible encounters, only 7 of which will be actually used. Now sure, some of those passages will lead to dead ends.
Certain death.
But I also greatly reduced the number of choices, so let's call it a wash. I mean, no wonder Jareth is so exhausted. That is a lot of wasted work. Believe it or not, when I was a brand new DM, this is actually how I planned things. I would create every single branching path, including dialogue paths, like I was making some kind of video game. Unfortunately, not only did I discover that more than half my work was never seen at the table, but oftentimes my players would do things that I hadn't planned for, which left me scrambling. In short, in the world of tabletop gaming, you can't account for every possibility. So unless you're a complete masochist who enjoys banging your head against the wall,
I hit something, yes?
let's try out method number 2. Here, we seemingly present our player with 2 options, but in reality, both paths lead to the same point. It's a lot less work, and we'll know the exact path they'll take, so we have complete control. Sounds great, right? The only downside is you've entirely removed player agency from the equation. You see, what makes ttrpgs different from any other game is the ability for the players to do anything. But this method removes that, so I'm not a big fan of it. However, that doesn't mean we can't ever drive players down preset paths. When I'm designing adventures, even branching ones, I tend to design important set-piece encounters that appear no matter what path the players take. Because sometimes it just makes narrative sense. Like, the entrance encounter with Hoggle should be unavoidable. It is the player's introduction to a new space and provides them with important information. Likewise, the humongous machine at the gates of the Goblin City guards an important location, and it makes sense that there might only be one entrance, creating a choke point here. And it's great to prepare your final BBEG encounter. It's the climax of your story. So, while some unavoidable encounters are reasonable, it comes with an important caveat. I never offer a player a choice if that choice is illusory. What's the point of including a fate choice? And likewise, what's the point of a labyrinth if there's only one set path? So, we're left with 2 less than stellar options, either pre-planning everything or railroading our players. But what if I told you there was a third way we could plan our adventure? One where we can be flexible and prepared without working ourselves senseless? Well, there is. And the answer is we create a constantly shuffling deck by preparing randomly generated encounters. There's actually compelling evidence that this is how the labyrinth operates in the movie. There are some true branching paths, as we know from the worm encounter, but there are also many times where it changes instantly.
This was a dead end a minute ago.
No, that's the dead end behind you.
It keeps changing. What am I supposed to do?
Plus, we see in the movie that some areas of the labyrinth don't actually physically connect, but instead imply magical teleportation. I mean, there's no ladder under that vase, just empty space. And look at this scene in the oubliette. Here, the same door leads to multiple locations. Now sure, the direction it's opened could factor in, but if the complexities of the labyrinth are that intricate, it would be indistinguishable from randomized chance.
Ah, this is it. Come on, then.
Plus, more evidence for random encounters? The Fireys. I mean, you can't convince me that these guys weren't the result of a random dice roll. So, some things are definitely random, but there is one more important influence present at the table, that being Jareth, our DM. Multiple times throughout the journey, we see Jareth use his influence of the labyrinth to control and complicate matters for Sarah, like upping the difficulty,
It's not fair.
or throwing in traps,
No, the cleaner!
What?
or even altering the course entirely, dropping Sarah and Hoggle into the bog of eternal stench. In other words, the DM is cheating, pulling cards from his sleeve whenever he chooses. This means our labyrinth is made of a combination of fixed events, random encounters, and DM influence. Knowing that, let's take a look at how to design and populate our labyrinth, or really, any complex area for players to explore that keeps the following criteria in mind. 1. Create important milestone encounters likely to appear no matter what path our players take. 2. Emulate the random, ever-changing aspect of the labyrinth. 3. Allow for flexibility and oversight by our DM. And 4, and maybe the most difficult, ensure player choice matters.
That's not hard, is it?
We are really going all out for this one. So, now that we're building our labyrinth, we need ideas, lots and lots of ideas. We need environments, creatures, obstacles, puzzles, thematic elements, and so much more. And for inspiration, we can look at how Jim Henson and company made Labyrinth behind the scenes. You see, Jim Henson had just finished Dark Crystal and wanted to follow up its technical achievement with a new project, so he approached conceptual artist and Dark Crystal collaborator Brian Froud to discuss ideas.
Jim and I discussed what the film might be about, and we decided it would be about goblins.
That same discussion, Froud pitched the idea of setting the story in a labyrinth, a place that could allow for variance in setting and provide metaphorical and symbolic meaning. With the core concept and setting in place, the creative brainstorming began. Froud filled sketchbooks with hundreds of unique and imaginative designs, and also painted an image that would become instrumental to the film.
I sat down and started to paint this picture. We felt that a baby would be an ideal thing to play off against the creatures.
Meanwhile, Henson jotted concepts, images, and ideas down in his journal, borrowing elements from classical books such as Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, along with traditional folklore and fairy tales. His goal was to create a movie with meaning.
I like a picture to have a sense of substance. I like it to be about life, about things that matter to me, that would make a difference to you if you saw it.
The main takeaway here is to free your mind when brainstorming. No matter how formed or faint the idea, put it to paper. Develop your worlds, monsters, NPCs, traps, hazards, anything that sparks your imagination. And like Henson, don't be afraid to borrow from your favorite stories. Once you're done, you'll have what Jim Henson and Brian Froud had after their project grew in ideas and scope. A mess. You'll have a mess, but you'll be ready to start cleaning.
Oh no, the cleaner!
To sort out their mess, Henson and Froud enlisted the help of friend George Lucas, as well as screenwriters like Dennis Lee, Terry Jones, Laura Phillips, and Elaine May, all of whom helped pare down and distill ideas, with Terry Jones notably using Brian Froud's sketches for inspiration.
I sat at my desk with Brian's drawings stacked on one side of the desk and writing away sort of to see what would happen. And every time I came to a new scene and I needed something to happen, I looked through Brian's drawings and found a character who was kind of speaking to me already, and suddenly there was the scene.
Likewise, as we write our own adventures, we should take our best ideas and use them as the basis for our key scenes, especially our beginning and end. You can feel free to prep these scenes with as much depth as you wish, since they'll likely be used at the table. For the rest of our ideas, we don't need to go nearly as deep. We can condense the idea down to a single line, like,
wise man gives advice, or a patrol of goblins torment a possible ally, or a pair of talking door knockers.
If the idea cannot be parsed down into a single interesting sentence or a couple of bullet points, it may not be worth including in your table. It should be interesting enough to be the basis for a quick encounter, but it shouldn't be so complex as to bog you down with its planning. Remember, these encounters have a high chance of not being seen.
It's also important to keep your random encounters varied, both in terms of type and location. Not every encounter should involve combat, for example.
Other options may be social encounters, traps or puzzles, secret treasures or items, even weather effects.
Another trick to generating your encounters is to remember that it's not your job to create solutions, just obstacles. So you don't need to plan how the players will overcome your hazards. That's their job, and they'll often invent ways that you would have never even considered.
And as for location, consider splitting your environment into different regions. The Labyrinth, for example, has walled mazes, botanic gardens, underground areas, forests, bogs, junkyards, and cities. These varied landscapes were in fact an intentional decision made by Jim Henson.
The whole trip through the labyrinth is like a voyage, and so to create the feeling of a voyage, you have to go through many different places.
For truly daring DMs, or just those who are quick on their feet, you can also generate random encounters with random dice rolls, or nested tables. I've created a set of nested tables to help you generate random encounters here, which I'll also include a link to the PDF in my Discord below.
Also, just like Jareth, prepare your own list of tricks that you can throw in if players feel like your challenges are a piece of cake.
It's a piece of cake! It's a piece of cake.
Pizza cake.
Keep them flexible enough to work in at any time, yet complex enough to be compelling. Remember, you are Jareth, the Goblin King. You are all-powerful. Don't hesitate to use that power.
So, we've generated key set piece encounters, compiled a list of random encounters, and bagged a few tricks to pull on our players. But how do we implement that fourth element? How do we have player agency shape the path of the story?
Which way do you want to go?
This was a bit of a challenge, because pragmatically, there's very little difference between a railroaded encounter or a random encounter if neither are the result of player choice. But after some thought, I think I have a solution. First, let the players themselves roll the random encounter dice. They don't need to see the table, but they should be the ones to make the roll. This literally puts their fate in their own hands. Second, and this idea is so simple that it's either genius or foolish, create your random tables in pairs. For example, instead of a d20 table, create 2 d10 tables. Then have your players choose left or right, up or down, with each representing one of their respective tables. This guarantees that no matter what encounter is rolled, it is the result of player choice. Personally, I'd prefer multiple pairs of d4 tables,
Organized by location and difficulty.
So, had enough, have you?
As you create these random encounters, you might start wondering how to string them all together into a plot. Well, my best advice for that is don't, because a plot is defined as the chain of events that happen within a story from beginning to end, and we can't know what the players will choose to do. Forcing players to follow a plot leads to railroading. Instead, just as we create problems, not solutions, we should remember to create a beginning and an end, but between the two, let the actual plot be written by the players at the table.
The beginning can consist of the players discovering that their goal exists within the labyrinth, as well as the first scene they encounter when they enter.
Excuse me?
Oh, excuse me.
The ending should consist of the final climactic showdown with the BBEG.
But everything in the middle should be determined by player actions, because that is what defines player agency. And speaking of player agency, now that we have our labyrinth built, it's time to throw the players inside and see them put that player agency to work. Check this out. This is definitely my villain era. Speaking of villains, now that we have our villains, characters, locations, and encounters,
It's time for the players to explore the world we created. And yet, it's not enough to have them wander around aimlessly. They should be progressing towards a goal. But how do they do that in a labyrinth full of random encounters? I mean, how do the players know that they are making progress?
It seems like we're not getting anywhere, when in fact,
We are.
we are.
one wonderful approach is inspired by the Labyrinth adventure game by River Horse Games. This book splits areas of the maze into chapters, and you make progress by starting at the beginning, rolling 2d6, and adding the result to your current page. If you succeed a bad encounter, you update the player progress, and then the next 2d6 rolled is added to that encounter's page. This continues until you reach a new chapter in a new area. The primary philosophy here is you can only go forward, never back. We can borrow this idea for our own labyrinth by imagining a series of concentric circles, with the goal being to progress from the outer ring toward the center. Each ring represents a new environment where challenges become more difficult. Players can navigate clockwise or counterclockwise around the ring that they're currently in, but not between rings, unless they reach a milestone of your choosing. Maybe they have to finish a certain number of encounters, or maybe each ring has its own mini quest, or maybe they progress by leveling up. It's really up to you. The important thing is, as they move toward the center of the labyrinth, they should grow or change, just like Sarah, who we literally see level up in the movie. What, you don't believe me?
In the beginning of the movie, Sarah feels powerless. She sees herself as the victim of her father and stepmother, and uses fantasy as a means to escape, namely, to escape responsibility. She refuses to accept responsibility for her brother, and refuses to accept responsibility for her life. Instead, she defers that responsibility to others.
Someone save me! Someone take me away from this awful place!
In short, she is without player agency. And we see it in the movie. For example, when she enters the labyrinth and comes to her first decision point, she doesn't make it on her own. She instead looks to Hoggle to make the decision for her.
Which way would you go?
Me? I wouldn't go either way.
If that's all the help you're gonna be, you can just leave.
She doesn't fare much better at her second decision point, where instead of following her gut and going toward the castle, she changes course after the worm instructs her to go the other way.
Don't go that way.
Oh, thanks.
And though she does show herself to be clever and capable at the riddle door,
No, it's right. I figured it out. I think I'm getting smarter.
she bases her next decision not on what is right or logical, but rather what is easy.
Since I'm pointed that way, I guess I'll go down.
She chooses down solely because it's the way she's already pointed. And when Sarah faces the labyrinth's dead ends, she counts on the DMPCs to save her. Like how Hoggle saves her from the oubliette or Fireys, or how Ludo saves her from the Bog of Eternal Stench. However, the turning point comes at the moment she is pulled away from her friends into Jareth's literal sphere of control. Here, she's lost, confused, and separated from her allies. Sarah has come to another dead end, and there's no one there to save her, except herself. Sarah's own player agency saves her from Jareth's grasp, but there is another test she must face before she can truly enter the gates of the Goblin City, that of temptation. Sarah is offered every material object she'd ever used as a means of distraction and escape in her old life. Yet, here, after remembering her goal of saving Toby, she realizes that all of those material objects are merely junk.
This is not junk.
Yes, it is. I have to save Toby.
Now that she's finally using her player agency, Sarah reunites with her party as they work together to face the dangers of the Goblin City before reaching Jareth's castle. And there, when it comes to the moment she has to face the Goblin King, Sarah doesn't defer responsibility or seek help. Instead, she accepts it as her own burden.
No, I have to face him alone.
But why?
Yes.
Because that's the way it's done.
Well, if that is the way it is done, then that is the way you must do it.
And in the climactic moment of the film, when Jareth, the Goblin King, offers her everything she's ever wanted in exchange for unquestioning obedience,
Just let me rule you, and you can have everything that you want.
the girl who had once thought of herself as a victim controlled by others finally realizes.
You have no power over me.
And now that she's proven herself to be independent, capable, and strong,
Sarah completes her quest and returns home, with Toby safe and sound. And by the end, Sarah has grown into someone responsible for her own life, while also realizing that from time to time, she still needs her friends.
Every now and again in my life, for no reason at all, I need you.
You do? Well, why didn't you say so?
As we finish navigating this labyrinth of the video, I'd like to return to the question I asked in the beginning. After all,
The way forward is sometimes the way back.
pause, rewind.
She's in the oubliette.
Wait. What if she went the other way?
While we can't know for sure where Sarah would have gone if she...
Wait, who are you?
I'm you from the end of the video.
I thought this was the beginning of the video.
No, the beginning is that way.
Oh, thanks.
No problem. Like I was saying, while we can't know for sure where Sarah would have ended up if she'd gone the other way, I think it wouldn't have been the oubliette, no matter what number she rolled on the dice. Because I truly believe that her choices have meaning.
And yeah, maybe she still might have eventually encountered some of the things we saw in the movie, like the wise man, or the guard at the gates, or Ludo and Sir Didymus. And sure, she likely would have ended up in that same chamber with Jareth in the same climactic ending. But I still contend that each decision Sarah could have made would have led her down a unique path. One that runs parallel or perpendicular or opposite of or mirror to any other possible path she could have taken, other possible realities. And yet, all of those paths, all of those realities converge upon a single point.
And I think that single truth reveals the structure of the labyrinth. And it's not a branching path.
Nor is it a linear railroad. I propose that the shape of the labyrinth is an Escher's staircase. It's different realities united together. The goal, Toby, and the villain, Jareth, they're able to navigate across those different realities and across those different planes to meet Sarah, or our players for that matter,
at wherever she or they might be. Because just like us in the boring real world, the heroes can only exist in the reality that their own choices have led them. Choices
dictated by their own player agency. And that, friends, that's how you navigate a labyrinth. So yeah, those are my thoughts when it comes to Labyrinth, as well as player agency and kind of my philosophy when it comes to world building. I just want to end by honoring the memory and legacy of Jim Henson, David Bowie, and Terry Jones for the amazing artistic contributions they made throughout their lives, as well as thank the cast and crew of Labyrinth, plus the makers of the Labyrinth adventure game, who I found a lot of inspiration from for this video. And mostly, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch through this entire video. You really do make it worth it. And in fact, if you are one of the few who actually made it all the way to the end, let me know by commenting which way you'd go, up or down. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello? Hello? I'm looking for the beginning of the video. Can anyone help me? Hello?